legacy sequels don't always pan out well. Sometimes they're just nostalgia bait, cash grabbing turds. And other times they're just painfully mediocre and make you question why they brought the franchise back in the first place. But a great legacy sequel is the one that it tries to improve the original while not at all losing what made the original so good in the first place, and finding a way to revive a dead IP for both the fans as well as newcomers. If you want an example of a terrible legacy sequel, there's numerous ones out there. Hocus Pocus 2 is the most egregious one I can remember off the top of my head. But if you want an example of a great legacy sequel, well, it's this one right here. Welcome back to Animation Station. Here's my review of Chicken Run 2 Dawn of the Nugget. For those of you that don't remember or haven't seen the initial review, I absolutely love this movie. Even though I didn't grow up with it, it's one I watched very recently for the first time, and I had a great time with it. I thought it was funny, charming, heartfelt, pretty much everything that makes a great Aardman movie. Sure, it's no Arthur Christmas. Sure, it's no Wallace and Gromit, but it is still a great film that I still highly recommend. So, going into this sequel, obviously my expectations were pretty high. Not to mention it took 23 years for this thing to finally come into full realization, after years and years of it just being stuck in development hell. But now, thanks to Netflix, Aardman has finally been able to release this highly anticipated sequel, with a few changes, but also not losing what made the original so great in the first place. Now, is it better than the original? No. I'd say it's about on the same ballpark of the original. It's not better, but it's not worse either. It's about that perfect happy medium. It does everything you want a sequel to do by trying to do things different and do things bigger and better. But at the same time, it still has that one fundamental flaw that does ruin the experience a little bit. In the first movie, it was the whole liar revealed thing with Rocky and his character. And in here, it's actually something completely different. Allow me to explain in my short, sweet, to the point written review. It may have taken 23 years to become reality, but we finally got a sequel to Chicken Run. And I'm happy to report that this not only lives up to the original, but is arguably even better to some people. This is an excellent sequel that was more than worth the wait. The characters are all still great, as well as some very enjoyable new additions. Like, Molly's great, Frizzle's great, the professor guy cracks me up a lot. Really love the new characters in here. Zachary Levi is superb as the new voice of Rocky, and the returning voice actors fall back into their roles flawlessly, especially the one who voices Ginger. She falls right back into that role with pretty much no difficulty whatsoever, and she still sounds great even all these years later, and is probably the best part of the movie. But again, Zachary Levi, he does an amazing job as Rocky. I had a good feeling he would, because he's a great actor, but he even surprised me. He is great as Rocky. He does a great job fulfilling the role of Rocky, and he makes me not feel bad, because this one does not include an absolute scumbag of a human being as his voice anymore. So, thank you, Aardman, for fixing one of your biggest and only mistakes that obviously was not your fault from the original Chicken Run. The writing is still great. It's still Aardman. It's still that writing. It's still that dry British humor. The action is great. The stop-motion animation is still fantastic and arguably even better than it was in the original. There's even more great dark adult moments, helped by the fact that this one is PG instead of G like the original. The runtime is perfect, the final act is enjoyably bonkers, and rewatchability is pretty high. However, this one still has an aspect of its story that holds it back, and that is its predictability. While in the original film it was the liar revealed aspect with Rocky and his character that was the most predictable part of the movie, in this sequel, it's instead the rebellious child aspect. Molly is by no means a bad character, in fact I actually quite like her, But her whole arc is so overdone that anyone who's seen this plotline before in any other movie can predict every single beat of this part of the story coming from a mile away before it even happens on screen. Like, that's this movie's biggest flaw. It is still very predictable when it comes to one specific aspect of the movie. And the rest of the aspects, if you really think about it, because it is a little bit predictable, but it's not to the point of, like, outright ruining the experience. And like I said, most of what made the original work is still intact here. And considering it's been 23 years and they still have it pretty much down to a science, that is something great. The music's great in here too, by the way. I almost forgot to mention that. Overall, this is a fantastic movie, but I'm not sure I can say that's better than the original. I'd say it's probably about on the same level of the first movie, but on rewatch, it could possibly improve. We'll see. It's happened before where I thought a sequel wasn't as good as the original, but rewatches helped change my mind on it a bit. Regardless, it's still a great movie that's definitely worth seeing, especially if you're a fan of the original or Aardman or stop motion animation in general. It is a great film, it's just not as great as the original, but it is still more than worth watching and it is still a highlight of this year. Final Verdict is a strong 8 out of 10, easily among the best animated films of the year, and while I can't say it's among Aardman's best, it's still a great sequel that's far better than it has any right to be. Like Legacy sequel, 23 years later, that sounds like a recipe for disaster, but they found a way to make it work in a surprisingly fantastic way. Like, seriously, check this film out if you haven't already. It's free on Netflix, and it's more than worth your time. Heck, if you don't have a DVD of the original is also on Netflix, so you can watch them back to back in a binge. So, yep, that's my review of Chicken Run 2 Dawn of the Nugget. Thank you guys so much for watching. Check this movie out. Seriously, it's great. It's more than worth your time. And see you guys next time for another 2023 movie review. And probably one that might be in my top 3 films of the year. Yeah, no joke. What do I mean by that? I'll tell you all about it next time with my review of Wonka.